What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you destroy your self-limitations and achieve your goals. I'm your host, Brandon Davis, and on today's episode, you might be noticing if you're watching on either YouTube, Spotify, or another streaming platform where you can visualize rather than just listen to the show, you may notice I'm actually back into my office. That means I've moved from Orlando, Florida. I'm back in Utah, gearing up for some school to start here next week, and I'm so excited to be back in office. It feels like I can get so much more work done here, and the production goes a lot smoother. So for those who listened during the summer, I appreciate it, and I'm super stoked to be back here with you yet again. Guys, in today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, we're going to be discussing the 5 do's and the 5 don'ts of how to commit yourself to a goal and how you're actually going to achieve said goal. I'm super excited to share these 5 little secrets that I've learned that I've applied inside of my life, as well as things that I've kind of picked off of other people. And with these 5 do's and the 5 do nots, I promise you, your goal setting process is going to become much easier. And number 5 on the do section is literally going to be the biggest benefit inside of your life. So stay tuned. Guys, with all that being said, let's jump into today's episode. You know what, guys? We're going to start with the do nots, the don'ts. These are things you should absolutely not be doing when setting a goal. These are inappropriate behaviors, things that are going to make it a lot longer of a process and arguably way more difficult to actually commit yourself to these goals. So item number 1 on the things you should absolutely not do is don't begin setting your goals while you're all hyped and fired up. A lot of times we might be sitting back and watching some cool sports documentary, and you see all the excitement in the crowd, or you just read a really good self-development book and you want to just jump full force into it, or you just listen to some speaker at a conference say, who's motivated, who's going to go out and chase their dreams, and you're all excited and fired up. And sometimes we set our goals during that moment. We set our goals when everything around us seems to be elevated and we're kind of on cloud 9. And although this is an appropriate time to get excited, get motivated, kind of get the hype behind whatever you're going to be trying to accomplish, it's not the best practice to actually set your goals during this time. Very often, more than not, you're actually going to set goals that are going to be too big or too far out there than you can actually accomplish. Not saying you can't accomplish something great, I'm sure you can, but we got to take these little baby steps in order to get there. So that's step number 1. Do not, by any circumstances, create a goal, set a goal for anything in your life when you're hyped or fired up. Wait till the excitement settled down and see if you're still willing to do it in a few hours, a few days, a few weeks. All right, going to number 2 of the things you should not do while setting a goal. And this one actually connects very simply to number 1, and it's this. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Sometimes when we are in those hasty decision-making moments, when you're all fired up and you just want to go out there and chase your dreams and become the king of the world, we often take a bigger bite than we can normally handle of that cheeseburger. Our mouth is open really wide, but we just can't seem to swallow those pieces. And I think this goes to the hasty decision-making of setting goals. Sometimes we want to achieve something because it'll look glamorous. We want to be feeling good in ourselves. We want to be flashy for other people who are watching us, but it's not the best practice. We have to set aside our goals and take them baby steps, or in this case, take small little bites every single time in order to actually accomplish the bigger picture. Once you finish those little baby bites, don't be afraid to keep setting your goal a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, but start small and grow from there. Because oftentimes if we set some drastic goal and we're not getting close to hitting it, it's going to feel like it's unachievable. It's going to feel like kind of the whole world is just crashing in on you when something goes awry. And by setting these tiny bites up for success, it's going to actually push you and motivate you a little bit harder rather than seeing the bigger picture. I think one of the best examples that I could share on the same aspect is actually our main man, David Goggins. And for every single person who knows David Goggins, he's kind of the guru, the man when it comes to mastering his own mindset, or mastering our own mindsets, right? And David, he has a story. It's actually in his first book. If you guys haven't read it, I highly recommend. I'll link it down in the description down below. But inside that book, David kind of had a self-reflection moment inside of his life where he looked at himself in the mirror and he saw somebody who was depressed, who was overweight, was kind of going nowhere with their lives, dead-end job, and wanted something a little bit more for himself. So in that moment, David decided he was going to go on a run and kind of start this transformation. He decided to do that when he was all fired up. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, I'm going to go change. And he goes on this run. What happened when he made that decision very hasty like that? He bit off more than he could chew. He got about a mile down the road and felt horrible. His whole body was just giving in. He said his heart was racing, and he leaned over on the side of the road and hurled. He puked all over the place. And guess what he did then? He said he walked back home, sat on the sofa, and he drank a milkshake, and he said he was quitting. And that is the prime example of somebody who made a hasty decision. He wanted to lose weight. He wanted to overcome all the obstacles in his life and become a different person. He went out and he failed immediately and he gave up immediately. And no discredit to him. I mean, at least he went out and tried. But this is what, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're willing to try. So learn from the master himself, learn from David in that experience, and recognize that if you're taking these massive leaps, these big bites, odds are it's not going to go exactly how you want. And even if David was able to accomplish, say, a 4-mile run that day and he made it back home, some of the consequences could follow where he'd be too sore the next day, so he wouldn't be able to run again, or he'd just make excuses with himself saying, well, I did it once, that's good for the next week. He wouldn't have pushed himself anymore. And we know from the story he ended up being able to overcome that. But for today's case and example, make sure when you're taking these bites, start small. In David's case, it could have been simply stretching that day, or maybe going on a walk a couple miles before trying to run it, or whatever your situation is, whatever goal you're trying to accomplish. Take those baby bites. Don't make it in that hasty instance. All right, number 3 of the absolute do nots on the list is don't go bragging about your success before you've actually succeeded. And I guess on that same point, maybe don't always go bragging about your success anyways, but you should definitely not brag about it before you've actually succeeded. How many times on social media have you seen somebody commit to a challenge, commit to, let's take a marathon for an example. They go on there and they tell everyone, they got a video of them running and they're like, oh, I love running so much. I just committed myself. I'm going to do a marathon next April, right? And you see the occasional post or story of them running, their training and whatnot. Why do you think they're doing that? In some cases, it might be just to kind of share along. I like doing that stuff. I make videos every once in a while describing the process of my cold showers and how that's going. But a lot of times when we do that, we're looking for these little pieces of satisfaction we could take inside of our lives. Going and training for that marathon is something very difficult. And so you want to get rewarded immediately, right then and there, rather than after you actually accomplish what you set out to do. You're looking for these likes, these comments, these people who you may know, you may not even know on social media, that are going to kind of boost your endorphins. They're going to get these spirit levels up. So that way, when you actually are training, you might think there's a purpose behind it. But the hesitancy I have with that, even though I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to share your goals on social media, I am warning you, and this is why I put it on the do not category here of the 5 do nots. I'm warning you that if you start posting about it, it's going to be very easy in the long run to say, well, I got my satisfaction of people liking my post immediately. They knew I was training. But then let's say something during your training goes awry. Let's say you get injured, you get shin splints, or even worse, you break your leg, right? You then have a very easy excuse to tell people, I was going to run that marathon in April, but unfortunately I got shin splints about 2 months in and I wasn't able to train appropriately. So that vision's just kind of gone. I'm not going to be able to run that marathon anymore. These excuses come from the fact that you were posting it online and you already got the satisfaction. Whereas if you didn't post it anywhere, or you actually held yourself accountable, you'd say, oh man, I may have got these shin splints a couple months in, but I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to try and stretch and do X, Y, and Z to prepare them. I'm going to ice up, heat up, whatever it may be. And then I'm going to get back out there. Because then once I actually do that marathon, that's when I deserve to post it. That's when I can receive a little bit of recognition. I was the person who actually went out and did it. Number 4 on the absolute do not do list is procrastination. Don't procrastinate your goals. I know this seems very straightforward, but more often than not, us as humans, we like to procrastinate everything that we have to do. One of my big ones is making the bed in the morning. I hate making the bed. I will find every excuse in the books to not make my bed. However, with procrastination, it comes down to the simple fact that eventually, if you actually set your mindset to it, you're going to have to do it. So why not get started? And procrastination is, in a way, preparation. So I will highlight that. And I've talked about this in episodes in the past. Go back and check out my episode, Visioning Past Your Goal, or You're Preparing Too Much. Sometimes you got to just jump in the arena or else you're never going to get started. But at the same time, I want you to fully prepare yourself. I guess the kind of middle ground I'm trying to get at is don't let procrastination become too much of a hindrance, in the sense that all you're going to do is prepare, that you're never actually going to go out and achieve your goal. If all you're doing is preparing how you're going to get to the gym, what you're going to do at the gym, what you're going to eat after the gym, how you're going to maintain that form at the gym, right? If all you ever do is thinking about it and preparing for it and never actually doing it, that's where the issue arises. So make sure when you're going out and setting a goal, you don't procrastinate and use that as your excuse or your hindrance on why you're not actually doing it. Now, do not number 5 is do not choose the wrong accountability partner. This one's very fun because it kind of draws into some of the relationships you have inside of your life. You need to find the appropriate accountability partner who's going to push you and not listen to your excuses. And this is the perfect segue into the 5 do's of what you should be doing when setting your goals and committing to them. And number 1 goes exactly into the opposite of number 5 on the don'ts. It's find the correct accountability partner. You know, oftentimes when we set our goals out, going back to that social media example, we'll tell the entire world, but the only person who's keeping us accountable is ourselves. Nobody who's just viewing your story or your post is going to keep you accountable. Heck, your significant other, your best friend, your mom, your dad, they're not going to always follow up with you on every single goal you have. You have to find an accountability partner who's going to push you, and more importantly, not listen to your excuses, because they are going to arise. Find somebody who's super stubborn, but more importantly as well, knows the industry that you're setting a goal for. If I want to find an accountability partner when I'm going to school, I'm not going to go find one of the kids in my classes who is struggling with that. I'm going to go find somebody who's the best in the class and say, I need help with this. Make sure I'm just staying on top of my assignments. Make sure I'm studying for the test X, Y, and Z. Go to somebody who actually knows about the area that you're setting your goal forward. Once again, going back to the gym example, why on earth would you ask somebody to be your accountability partner who never goes to the gym? They're not going to know what to ask you. They're not going to know how to check up on you. They're not going to know anything. You need to find somebody who's A, stubborn, B, is actually going to be brutally honest with you when you're coming up short, C, won't take your excuses, and D, they actually know what category or how the industry works for the goal that you're setting for yourself. And I'll add this as well. You have to make sure you're not getting offended when your accountability partner is actually trying to help you. I'm not saying they're going to be right 100% of the time. You're not going to be right 100% of the time, but take their advice, take their kind of forwardness to you, and don't get offended by it. Strategy number 2 on the do's when creating a goal is this. You need to write down your goals, your vision, and your reflections. Make sure when you set aside that goal, you're actually visualizing it inside of your head or on some physical format, whether that's posting a picture on your wall right next to where you sleep, having a slip of paper on your dashboard in the car, or even a reminder on your phone. You need to have something that's going to help keep you in balance, so that way when the going gets tough, you're going to stay tougher. That way when you want to quit on that goal, you're going to be able to keep pushing yourself a little bit more. By writing down these goals or having pictures, some way you can visualize them physically, whether, once again, writing them down or seeing them, it's going to help motivate you when times do get tough. One example for all my listeners out there who are watching right now, if you see my home screen right here, it says Perspective Happiness. That was my vision for 2023. I wanted to try and find more happiness in all the hardships I had in my life. The horrible moments, definitely the good moments, but more importantly, those horrible moments, those moments I didn't think I could get through or just made a big hindrance inside of my life. I wanted to find the joy in them. So that's my vision. The reason why I have it as the front cover of my home screen on my phone is because every time I open my phone now, that's what I'm picturing. If I'm having a rough moment, Perspective Happiness. That's how I see my vision. I wrote down my goal, and now I know to focus on that 24/7. Number 3 on the do's is make sure you're reflecting on your progress. Sometimes when you set aside these goals, you get maybe a week, 2, 3 weeks in, and it's going really, really well. The easiest example for this is going back to the gym. You might see that progress immediately. Say you want to lose 20 pounds in a couple months. Immediately, you might lose 2 pounds on the first week, another 3 pounds the next week. On week 3, you might lose 1 pound. And then you hit week 4 and you kind of plateau a little bit. You didn't lose any weight. Then, heaven forbid, on week 5, you actually gained a couple pounds, right? It's very easy to say when you hit that week 4 and you didn't lose anything, hit that next week on week 5 and you actually gained weight. It's super easy to throw in the towel and say, well, I lost a couple pounds. Guess that's where I'm kind of at. My body doesn't allow me to lose more weight, right? You start putting these excuses back into the universe. You start blaming other people. You start blaming other things. Whereas if you actually reflect on the progress inside of your goals, it makes it a lot more attainable. It makes it more realistic and it makes it more fun. If you sit back and you take progress pictures of you losing that weight, how much more muscle you're gaining, how much healthier you feel, you write down, today I woke up and I wasn't as tired as yesterday. I didn't get sleepy partway through the day. I went to bed better. You actually track the progress of where you're at. It's going to make the experience so much more enjoyable. Do number 4 is believing in yourself. Do you actually believe in yourself? And I hope the answer is yes. Sometimes it goes down to the basics, guys. If you're not believing in yourself, do you actually think you can accomplish this goal? Of course not. You need to put the trust and faith in you. If you took the time to prepare to achieve your goals, you better know that if you give it your all, you're going to do it. Sometimes it'll be more difficult than others. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit more angry when these hardships do arise. But if you can keep the constant faith knowing that you can bet on yourself 10 out of 10 times, you're going to hit the goal. Might not be in the exact time frame that you originally planned for. It might not be in the exact same method or manner, but eventually you're going to hit that goal. You have to believe in yourself. And finally, closing out our list of the do's when you're creating a goal, you do need to enjoy the journey. If you're not enjoying the journey throughout the entire process, it's going to be very difficult to keep going. Maybe in these short-term goals, you can kind of, push your way through it. You can kind of just go brute force, head to the wall, and just push on and get through the goal. But these goals that take a little bit longer, these fitness goals, these life goals, these spiritual goals, right? Here's an example. If you're trying to connect better with God, not every single time is He going to give you that immediate answer. You need to kind of work yourself into it. You need to work for it a little bit more. So if you're not finding joy inside that journey, it's going to be very difficult for you not to throw in the towel and quit. One mentality I like to have in order to keep myself pushing is the I get to mentality, or this I get to mindset. The I get to mindset is very simple. It's a philosophy that says I get to X, Y, and Z. Sometimes when we complain inside of our lives, it's out of these circumstances that to somebody else would be heaven. For instance, I get to clean the house today. Not only are you cleaning up a space that is provided for you through your hard work and paying your mortgage or your rent, but you also get to have ownership in something. Picture a homeless person. Wouldn't they love to clean a house? Of course they would. I get to clean my house today. Or let's jump over to the school example. So many people on this planet don't have the opportunity to get free education or to get an education in any form. I get to go to school today. I get to learn. I get to go see my friends. I get to go to work. I get to work out today. I get. This is the I get mentality. This is on how you can enjoy the journey. Stop focusing on the negatives, the I have to. It's I get to. Try and change your mindset a little bit and it'll make it easier. All right, guys, to summarize, I'm going to go over once again the 5 do nots and the 5 do's when setting a goal. Do not number 1. Absolutely in no circumstances should you start your goals off when you're fired up or you're super excited or hyped. Do not number 2. Do not brag before the success. Number 3, don't bite off more than you can chew. Number 4, don't choose the wrong accountability partner. Number 5, don't procrastinate. And then here's the 5 do's that you should be doing when setting your goals. On the contrary, you should be finding the right accountability partner. Do find that accountability partner. Number 2, do write down your goals. Number 3, write down the progress that you've made. Number 4, do you actually believe in yourself? Make sure you do. And closing us out at number 5, do enjoy your journey. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. If you thought something was meaningful or you want to reach out for whatever reason, my email will be in the description down below. Don't hesitate to send me a message. Likewise, if you did enjoy it, make sure to follow, subscribe, and like. That way I can continue sharing this podcast with more people. If you think somebody you know might benefit from hearing today's words spoken on the podcast, make sure to share it with them. It helps me grow this podcast. And then for all my longtime listeners, as you know, I like finishing out every episode with a challenge. My challenge is simply this: do the 5 do's and don't do the 5 do nots when starting a goal. Guys, at the end of the day, just remember, it'll all be okay. Just take a step back and start creating goals using the 5 do's and do nots.